Hello and welcome to my Labbuildr Unleashed session. In the following sessions I will provide you with an insight on Labbuildr and how to run and configure Labbuildr for scenarios including Networker for Hyper-V and Exchange and all that other stuff. I will separate this in some different chapters, and in each chapter I will explain some of the details and ideas behind Labbuildr. Labbuildr is completely written in PowerShell, so we can get most of it by using PowerShell stuff like get help. So I have a help integrated into Labbuildr that explains me about the parameter sets. So in Labbuildr I have something called scenarios, like a domain controller or like an always-on environment. Each scenario is its own parameter set. So if I want to build a domain controller only, I just specify the minus domain controller only switch. It's the DC only. I give a master object. The master is the prepared sysprepped virtual machines that I provide for you from the download section, and it's just the VMDK and the VMX file that make up the master. Then we can specify we want to use a gateway, and it always defaults to the .103, which is typically the networker server, where I configure a NAT gateway from Windows. I can specify the VMNet, which is the network I want to use on my VMware workstation. There's the safe defaults that stores all those parameters in the defaults XML. I'll get to it later on. And I can select like different addresses, subnets, and all that other stuff. So for instance, to get an idea on parameters, I can do a get help Labbuildr minus parameter minus parameter address family, and it tells me all about the address family, or minus parameter master, and it tells me which available masters we have. When we are going to build a virtual machine right now, we are using the 2012 R2 fall update master. So if we look at my environment, just open it up. I have like 407 gigs free on my drive F. This is where we are going to install Labbuildr. If we go in here in my current Labbuildr environment, this is the master that I have extracted. This contains server 2012 R2 fall update. There's another thing. When I use the minus save defaults option, it stores all my parameters in the defaults file. I have a an example here for you, defaults.xml.example. If we look at this, we see, okay, from my previous installations, I've used Networker 8.2.11, I used the fall update and all that other stuff. Right now it's not available, so I will show you the progress on how to create that defaults file for your first installation. So for the first installation, we just start a networker, a domain controller with a networker server. And for this, we type in Labbuildr minus DC only, which builds the domain controller. Since we do not have a default master selected right now, we do it now, and we use the 2012 R2 fall update. You can always use the tab completion box here. We want to have a gateway. We want to use VMNet 2, which is also the default. We want to save the defaults, and we don't want to specify a special size. The build domain per default is Labbuildr, so if you want to change the domain name, type in your domain name and it will be safe for all other deployments. So we don't want to use the build domain option, we use the default domain. We want to install the networker, and for networker there is a networker version, and I want the default normally is is always the latest version, and we explicitly point here to networker version 8.2.11, but normally it's I select the latest version in the default from the command line. My subnet, if I want to have a special subnet, per default we go to 192.168.2.0. If you want to specify another subnet, you can specify it here. Address family defaults to IPv4. If you want to have a mix or IPv6 only, you can specify it here as well. And you can specify your own IPv6 prefix if you're using v6 and the prefix length. So you'll get more on this in documentation on Labbuildr. The drive letter, per default, I'm running Labbuildr from a mounted VHD on that sits on C /sources. I'm running from a USB drive that's connected to H, so my sources sit on H. So I specify here drive letter H, and I don't want to have the VHDX mounted automatically because I extracted everything on my external drive. So this is my call, how to start Labbuildr. Since I don't want to sit here and wait while this is all running, and I want to show you how much time it takes, I put this expression into a measure command so that we get the time of the command running there. We just hit enter and it compares the work order and tells me, okay, we built a domain controller and a virtual machine out of this environment. So VMware starts up and starts with the deployment of the domain controller. So this is the first machine to be built. What we can see here, it's created a link clone and it specifies a short warning that that we're using a special custom network, and we normally have to adjust or make sure that the network is available in our VMware workstation. So it tells me also that we use the default domain Labbuildr and the subnet of 192.168.2.0. I don't specify that much output in here. If you want to have a more comprehensive output on what Labbuildr is doing, you might want to use the -verbose. That tells you every step Labbuildr is doing, but when you use -verbose, there are some hooks in there where Labbuildr stops and waits for the next command execution. That means you have to press return buttons in the virtual machines. This is to verify that all the scripts are running perfectly, or just for you to see how Labbuildr runs under the covers. So we switch this to full screen here, and we see Networker Labbuildr starts some scripts later on in here. So the first thing that it does, it copies the scripts over to the virtual machines. This is what happens right now. So all the scripts that I need for my virtual machine deployment are now copied into the virtual machine, and that's the default for every deployment that I'm doing. Depending on what I'm deploying, I'm copying special scripts to the networker, to the Labbuildr environment. Now I'm preparing the domain because it's the domain controller, so some scripts are running from within the virtual machine to configure actually the domain controller. From this point, it will take like some 8 or more minutes or 7 minutes depending on your hardware to configure the domain controller. Once this is finished, it will kick in and configure the networker server. There are some reboots going on in the system because every time you have to reconfigure, there are some reboots required. I try to strip down the reboots to a minimum by just specifying on which points I want to have a reboot. But for domain controller, typically I have to do 1 or 2 reboots. And if I do some settings like changing the behavior of user account control, this also requires a reboot. So typically per deployment, each machine needs to reboot between 1 and 3 times, depending on what we are doing. I have a hook inside Labbuildr. I always wait for the VMware tools up and running in the virtual machines, and I always wait for sometimes special processes are running or users are logged in, just for me to know that I can continue with my scripting. So right now we're installing the AD forest. So in the first step we did all the preparations. Now we are building the Active Directory forest. There is not much that you can tweak here from within Labbuildr. So I'm using parameters everywhere, and if you specify another domain name, it will build another domain with another name. and you might want to look in the scripts that are sitting in the scripts directory. There are some things that you might want to customize for yourself, but beware, whenever you modify the script itself, they will be overwritten during the next update. So I leave this running for a while and go here to pause the recording, and I will be back soon once the environment is up and running to explain you some things about the environment.